So now the other ones are renewable sources. These include hydropower, which is using the natural flow of water from the top of the mountain down to the ocean to generate electricity, and also geothermal energy. This is something that is quite expensive, but has a lot of potential, and we are doing some of these projects actually here in California, up in Northern California. Okay, let's talk really quickly about solar. You guys probably know a little bit about this, but there's actually a couple of different ways that you can do solar. And, the sun is basically free energy. What you have to pay for is the actual device that captures the sun energy. But the sun energy is always going to be there. So solar panels are getting better and better and better. Solar panels are pricey, right? But price is dropping. And I'm showing you actually a couple of different setups here. You're looking at a solar panel array on the top of somebody's house, and then also a solar panel array out in the middle of the desert. Another solar source that is being used with increasing frequency is actually mirrored solar. So instead of using solar collectors, you simply use a whole series of mirrors set up in a huge area out in the desert, square miles worth of mirrors that are reflecting the sun's energy up onto a point. And there's a tower in the middle of all of this, and it's focusing all of that sun's energy on that tower. Within a half an hour of the sun rising, the temperature in that tower is over 700 degrees Celsius. And that's just from natural use of mirrors. It heats up water in that tower to turn a turbine to create electricity, and voila, you essentially have free energy after you've paid to have the infrastructure put in place. Okay, now let's talk about wind. Denmark currently is 20% powered by wind, and that number is actually increasing. They were forced to go to wind power in the early 1970s when they showed support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War. During that time, OPEC decided to flex their muscles and cut Denmark's import of oil in half, which really hurt Denmark, and it kind of forced Denmark into thinking about alternative energies all the way back in the early 1970s. We were thinking about that too, although we kind of reversed on that in recent years. It looks like we're going to actually try to push for that. By 2020, we're hoping that 6% of our wind power is going to be, or 6% of our power is going to be driven by wind. That's not that far in the future. I mean, it's basically 2012 now, so we're talking 8 years into the future here. 20% of our wind power is going to, or of our power will be coming from wind by 2030. These are optimistic numbers. I hope it's not too little too late. Hydroelectric power. 20% worldwide, however, there are environmental effects. We discussed some of these effects when we talked about water. Water flow blockage is actually a very important one, but essentially you're using the gravity feed to turn a turbine. Works really well if only there were a way to get around the environmental effects. Well, there actually are. New dams, first of all, you cannot build a new dam in the United States. It would be virtually impossible to get one passed through the federal law, the federal process. You cannot block a waterway any longer. So instead, what people are doing is they are using that gravity feed in more creative ways. The picture on the lower left here, you actually have a sluiceway, so the water is actually being drawn off so that they didn't have to dam off this really beautiful waterfall. They have the water flowing through here and flowing past a turbine, and then it's being released downstream. So the idea is to disturb that waterway as little as possible. This is an actual project in Alaska, and here's one in Idaho Falls, where they've created an artificial sluiceway here so that the natural flow is still maintained. So voila, you get the advantage of hydroelectric, and there's no need for dams. Geothermal is probably one of the newest technologies that has actually been utilized. Uses heat energy from deep in the earth. This is the example right here, the Santa Rosa Geysers Recharge Project, where they are essentially putting water way down deep into the earth, getting it superheated, drawing it back up, and using that temperature differential to drive turbines to create steam, or to create steam to drive turbines and make electricity. This is a very, very involved project, though. To get one of these plants installed is very, very difficult and costly. But once it's in place, it's actually a very interesting an interesting prospect. However, with all of these different technologies, all of these different things that are going to somehow wean us off of oil, this still is not going to help without the far more important focus on reducing what we use. If you use a lot of electricity, finding an alternative source of electricity is fine, but simply reducing how much electricity you use is even better. It gets you much further in your goal. So working towards sustainability. What does a sustainable society look like here in our country? Well, sustainable society uses resources responsibly and protects biodiversity. We discussed at length why biodiversity is so critical. And the current society that we live in and the societies that we see emerging in other parts of the world, most especially in China and India, are not sustainable. And that is because of an increase in land use, a decrease in natural ecosystems, the fact that our agriculture actually relies on non-renewable things like oil to drive our tractors, trucks to drive that stuff around, pesticides that are generated from oil. All of that stuff is non-renewable. Too much of our agriculture actually goes to livestock, and increasingly now, some of our agriculture is actually going to feed our cars in making ethanol, which is a horrible, horrible idea. Reliance on fossil fuels and minerals. The fact that we rely on these things that are non-renewable is not a sustainable recipe whatsoever. So what do we need? Here are some characteristics of a sustainable society, and this is something that you can certainly help us to work towards. Reducing your use of stuff per capita. Stop buying so much stuff. That's really part of the problem, and despite what our politicians tell us, we are not going to be able to spend or purchase our way out of this problem. We're only going to get out of this problem if we stop spending and stop purchasing quite so much. Emphasis on perpetual and renewable energy sources. Wind, solar, responsible hydroelectric, and also geothermal. These have got to become a focus rather than just a little nuance. They have to be the mainstay. And also, heat and waste management have to be minimized and efficiently reused. We need to reduce our waste stream. With the growing population, we are now at 7 billion humans on the planet. That is a huge amount of waste. Also, maximal recycling of all resources. I have this listed last because recycling should be the last thing we should focus on. We need to focus on these other ones first, and then recycle what is actually remaining. Okay, so what can you do to help? Number one, be an environmental steward. Live sustainably. There is no shame in being an environmentalist. That's okay. It simply means that you care about the environment in which you live and in which your children are going to live. Number two, trust the science. Why trust science? Because science is evidence-based. Scientists don't make things up. We are beholden to back the things up we say with evidence. Consume less energy and less stuff. I would like to see more of you commuting to college on the bus, or better yet, on a bicycle or walking. If it's not necessary to drive a car, then don't do it. Reduce, or better yet, eliminate your use of disposable plastics. Remember, there's no such thing as disposable plastic. It doesn't dispose. It stays here forever. Reduce your exposure to hazardous materials. It's all around you. Watch what you eat, watch what you buy, and watch what you're breathing, because if you don't watch, nobody else will. And probably the most important, be aware and vote. I can't tell you how important this one is here. Not only voting in elections, but you vote every single day. You vote in what you eat. You vote with your fork, that is. You vote with your wallet every time you pay for something. When you order something on a menu, or when you pay for something when you pull money out of your wallet, you are essentially validating that item. You're saying, I approve of this. I think it's okay to do this. So, if, for example, you are now of the opinion that plastic water bottles, are just about the worst environmentally, the worst invention on the planet, then vote with your wallet and never purchase one for the rest of your life. Now, when you look to politicians, be very skeptical on what they tell you, because they are, for the most part, very ignorant when it comes to science. And this is not, I know some of the pictures I showed earlier on were Republicans, but this is not something that is only seen in the Republican Party. There are ignorant people in all political parties. I just wanted to throw this one out here. Representative Hank Johnson from Georgia, he's a Democrat, and he said something pretty darn interesting back in March of 2010, where his deepest concern about the island of Guam was that it might sink. Literally, it might sink into the ocean if we put too many Marines on it. Again, click on this link, or the link that I have on the website, if you don't believe that he actually said this. Okay, so this is a little bit of a plug. You definitely want to love nature, don't you? But don't love nature, if you know what I mean. There's no shame in being a tree hugger, like this little girl here. This is my little vertebrate hugging a tree. Okay, so let's end with this little quote here. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. And that is why you are in this class. You are now the most educated on issues of biology, probably of all of your friends, all of your family, and it's now your job to go out and teach them. So, congratulations, everybody. You have now made it to the end of the class.